Welcome, and thank you for joining us from your home for the second annual Parenting Learning event presented by Burnaby Family Life in collaboration this year with the Burnaby Public Library. We are grateful for the opportunity to live, work, and play and host this virtual event on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Coast Salish people, Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam nations. My name is Nancy Grenier. I work at Burnaby Family Life, a charity that has been providing services to families and individuals in need in our community for the past 50 years. Every year, we organize a parenting learning event, and this year we are bringing you the event online in collaboration with the Burnaby Public Library. We bring this to you with funding from the BC Ministry of Children and Family Development, and thanks to that support, we're able to bring you the event for free. We also want to do a shout out and thank Gary and Sandra Wilson at What's on Burnaby for their support and for the promotion of the event. So every Thursday night at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we'll be here with a new speaker, new discussion, new topic, to talk about something that's important to families. And these topics were selected with input from the parents who participate in our programs at Burnaby Family Life, and also with input from a steering committee comprising of education and community leaders. So we're grateful for everyone's input. We hope you're going to find this interesting. This year will be a 4-part event. So as I mentioned, every Thursday night. We really want to hear from you. If there's any ideas you have, any suggestions on how we can make things better, please let us know. You can reach us through bflgrowscommunity.org. And also, if you don't have time to stay with us tonight, the program is scheduled to run until 8 o'clock. If this is too much time for you to dedicate to us, then please access the recording on the website, so you'll be able to watch the session at your convenience. So get comfortable, and let's go over to Sangeeta, who's going to get us started with tonight's program.
Thank you, Nancy, and a very warm welcome to all our viewers today. My name is Sangeeta, and I also work at Burnaby Family Life. Tonight's topic is shifting screen habits, and is the second of a series of 4 talks that aims to encourage parents and caregivers to sustain their resiliency during and beyond the pandemic. It is also a part of our ongoing effort to provide parents and caregivers with the tools they need to support the healthy development of their children. And so today, we will learn and talk about a topic that I think is on everyone's minds, and that is screens. I think we all, parents, grandparents, teachers, children, scientists, we all are trying to figure out our relationship with screens. Screens have been a part of our lives for a while now, but the last year has seen a significant shift in the way we use screens. Screens today have become ubiquitous in our lives. They now provide us more than just entertainment. They've become our primary access to learning, working, and socializing. Screens are here to stay. And I'm not saying that all screen time is bad time, but with such a significant presence in our lives, how do we maintain healthy habits so that we are able to sustain healthy relationships within the family while managing and making the best use of screen time? So today we have with us Michele Maurer, who will help us gain some insights about our attraction to screens. She will also share some practical tools and tips on how we can develop healthy screen routines as a family, and especially as we come out of the pandemic. So Michele Maurer, who is on faculty with the Newfield Institute and also a registered marriage and family therapist with 30 years of experience working with individuals, couples, and families, is here with us today. And over to you, Michele.
Thank you, Sangeeta. That's it's a big topic area, and I think it's not lost on us all that we are talking about some of the things we need to watch out for in screens while presenting this on screen. I think it's ironic, of course, and I think it's part of the irony, of course, of this past year we've all been getting ourselves through one way or another. So I want to I want to start just a little bit about, I think, Sangeeta, you mentioned, we're looking at trying to ensure that as parents, we are mindful of what is in our best interest of our children, and how are we to take care of and lead the way for them, not just as parents, but as educators, as other people, part of the village of raising our children. It's up to us, and it always has been, to lead the way, to try and understand these things. And and screens really have been a really relatively new phenomenon in our world. And I would say, even before 2020, in 2019, I had already had people speaking with me and asking questions about screens and what was happening with them. And unfortunately, I haven't had to do all of the research myself. I really have benefited from some people that have been very good about pulling research together and understanding this. So my hope this evening is both just to provide a little bit of background about where were screens in our world? What's the deal with screens? Why are we so drawn to them? And I wish it was just a problem that affected children, but it affects us as well. And then this year with the pandemic, even much more so. So I do want to help that those of you who are taking the time, and thank you for doing this, taking the time because you care about what's happening with screens in your own life and in the lives of your children. Um, I just want to help you have a little bit more of the information that's been gathered about what's happening with screens. Why are they so alluring? Why do we get stuck on them? And then what do we do about that? Are there ways that we can make the best of this situation? And I would say yes, absolutely. In fact, some of the things that have happened since the pandemic have actually provided some opportunities for that. So I'm looking forward to kind of walking through, and we've got a lot of things to talk about. It's a big topic, so um, if we skip over something a little bit too quickly, there will be a half hour at the end, and I'm happy to do my best to answer some questions that might come up for you as we go through this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, raising our children and helping our children to develop, because I don't want to go into a long speech about parent and child development, but just to say really that from the very beginning of time with parents, with children, it's always been the job of the parents, the grandparents, the aunties, the uncles, the educators. It's always been the job of our adults who care for children to help them to feel welcome, to help them to feel like we love being with you, and to give them some ways of following our lead, to let them feel like they belong with us, belong as part of our families, as part of our communities. It's always been our job to help them to grow up, because our species really is born so incredibly immature. We really need a very long period of sustained connection with our children in these really important ways, and not just helping them belong to us, but helping them feel that they are special, that they are loved, and that it's okay, that however you are, it's okay that you can be sharing yourself with us as the adults in your life. This has always been our job. And even before, as I said, even before 2020, there were some people kind of noticing, wow, it seems like maybe something's shifting. It seems like screens might be taking up a little bit too much of our attention. They might be stealing a little bit of what we would think of as our job. Why are you so interested in playing with your video, uh, your handheld devices, whatever screens are your favorite screens? So the cries of parents and educators everywhere was already happening before 2020. And then since 2020, of course, a lot of things have magnified. Whatever was out there was magnified in the last year. And so I think our understanding about what's happening with screens will help us inform ourselves then about how do I shift this? How do I make this thing that's not going to go away? How do I help it to be something that doesn't hurt, but can be a tool? Because with all new developments in our world, usually it takes quite a long time for a culture to adopt to the adopt these new tools in a way that sustains the things that are most important and and allows us to use the tool to the best of its ability and potential. And we've really only had a very short period of time with screens to make that adaptation. And so I think it is really important because the pandemic seems to have magnified the changes that were happening. um, it's really important, even more so now, that we are informed so that we can make our best decisions, because ultimately we are still the ones that are responsible for helping our children to grow into the adults for the next generation, to be the problem solvers for tomorrow, to be the people who are interested in exploring and being curious about the world, to be able to make really tough decisions. All of these things are part of the growing up that we're meant to foster as parents, as teachers, as caregivers, grandparents, aunties, uncles. And so if if this kind of connection is really what we rely on, our species relies on a really strong bond between children and the people that take care of them. If connection is our really important need, in fact, I would say the most important need, and that's not just me saying it, really has actually proven itself in a lot of research. And I would even say, I want you to even consider, if you think about um, we've probably, a lot of us have heard about Maslow's needs and this idea that there's sort of a hierarchy of needs, and that the very foundation of that is our need for togetherness, our need for contact and closeness. And and if you think about it, if we happen to be in a hurricane or some kind of natural disaster, and we happen to not know where a member of our family is, that as that disaster, if it was a hurricane and the wind stops blowing, that the first thing you're going to go look for, just think about it. What are you going to go look for first? It's not going to be water. It's not going to be food. It's going to be your people, because that is how we survive. That's um, how we as a species survive. So if this contact, this closeness, this togetherness is our essential need. It is how we survive. Of course, when we are now facing separation like we've never faced, it makes sense of how this feels like such a threatening year, how this year has thrown us topsy-turvy, how we've really struggled with a lot of emotion, because every time something feels like it threatens us, it stirs a lot of emotion in us. And so the emotion stirs us, and it's trying to get us to be connected again. Emotion is letting us know what's risky. It's letting us know it doesn't feel quite right that my family members are too busy to pay attention or too busy to come to the table. And so before the pandemic, this was one of the things a lot of people were concerned about. It's one of the things that the pandemic has actually helped quite a lot. We don't have anywhere else to be. Most of us have better opportunities now to have family dinners, and thank goodness for that. But there's a lot more, so I want to keep going. Um, when when we were looking at what's going on with screens, and we looked at this kind of 2019 and beforehand, I heard a lot of people, and read a lot, and understood that a lot of people were actually having a good look at what's going on, because we were starting to notice that the usual influence we have over our children, the way that they wanted to spend time with us, enjoyed talking with us about their day, that it's like there'd been a shift, that something was happening. And I think some of us didn't really know how to put our finger on it. We weren't really sure what was going on. It seemed normal that kids really just wanted to spend time with their friends, but when we look back in history, that wasn't quite normal. It wasn't really a great trend because, as I said at the beginning, it's always been our job as the parents to raise children to their potential. And and it takes the maturity of adults, it takes the caregiving and the unconditional caregiving of adults to help children get there. So when children started to pay more attention to what's going on, I'm afraid I might miss out the latest trend. I have to listen, I have to find out, I have to put myself out there on my devices. I want to spend my time with my game. I think a lot of us as parents, we could kind of just feel something's wrong in the water, something's going on. And and so, some of the people have kind of looked at this and they said, actually, this is this is a trend that started as early as the 1950s, the 1960s, but it's really snuck up. And then since screens have become much more a part of our world, what's happening is that children are turning to children, that they are orienting instead of looking to my parents to say, what should I do? Children are starting to look to each other. And there's a lot of reasons for this, and some of them are really well sort of spelled out in the book Hold On to Your Kids. It was a book by Dr. Gordon Neufeld and Dr. Gabor Mate a few years ago. I mean, they put the book out, I think, in 2005, 2004, um, when they realized that children were starting in droves to orient themselves instead of to their parents, following the lead of not the parents, but their friends, recognizing children were spending so much time together. We'd had them, registered in school and then after school activities, and children are so separated from us. Remember I said separation is one of our biggest threats. Children are meant to be close with us, and when they spend so much time separated from us, and then it becomes it seems normal that children are spending so much time wanting to be with their friends. We think because it's normal that it's okay and it's a good thing. And in fact, things that are normative are not always good. And so we already had this sort of growing problem that we couldn't really put our finger on until I think a few people kind of put some of the pieces together. But let's just tuck that aside now and just know that as children start following the peers and trying to look like them and sound like them, and they come home talking like them, that this kind of catches our attention naturally, and it doesn't seem quite right, and it's part of the story of screens. So I want you to just kind of tuck that in the back for a moment. And I want to continue on talking about what's happening then for kids. If kids are sort of moved to be together with their people, but over time, their people and what that means to them, the people they want to be closest to is their peers. How it used to be is that we would spend time with our peers. Our day would be busy. We would come home and we would relax with our family where we were accepted unconditionally, well, ideally. And we had a chance to kind of take a break and maybe think about who I am and be more in touch with my roots. As screens started to be a thing where kids were at home in the evenings, more wanting to be with each other, they actually started to feel children were starting to feel quite a lot of separation, even when they're at home, because our culture, our civilization is set up in family dwellings where I'm now with my parents, I'm with my siblings. I don't feel like I'm home. I'm not with my people. And so children have been experiencing quite a lot of separation, and enter the screens. Screens have actually provided, well, they've provided a few answers to some of the human problems that we experience, but we need to understand what it is that the screens are offering to answer this problem of children being separate from their friends. Um, Unfortunately, it's actually magnified this issue of children turning to children. And so it, it makes sense then that a lot of parents have been upset. And sometimes we get into big conflicts with our children. And unfortunately, this is also problematic because when we get in big conflicts with them, feel even further away from us. So um, I certainly want to spend some time talking about that. when our main way of feeling well in the world, feeling safe in the world, is to be close with our people, when the pandemic arrived on the scene, it's actually thrown a wrench not only for the kids who are orienting towards their peers, it's thrown a wrench into all of our lives because it's thrown so much separation at us. Usually the answer to our distress, the answer to our struggles is to come and be with our people, to be with our community, to be with our village, our parents, our caregivers. But what happens when the greatest need we have for togetherness is also the greatest threat? I mean, think about that. How distressing, how terrible when we want so much to be with our family, and how often people have been worried now, when I am with my family, could I make someone I love sick? Could I cause problems by being close? And so, of course, it's not just children, it's like everybody is experiencing unprecedented separation, which is partly why the screens question is magnified, and we do really understand or need to understand what's going on with them, because screens entered our world. I mean, I remember in the late 90s, I had a cell phone, but it wasn't a cool cell phone. It wasn't the kind that you have now. Nobody had pretty phones, and they were like these big bricks. I kind of laughed at my job that I got this big brick that I was supposed to carry around when I went out in the community. that was my start with it, is about 1997, I think, and I got this big brick handed to me and go out in the community. um, it's really changed since then. And since then, a lot has also changed as far as how often people have been using them. It's a fantastic tool for some things, um, and a tool in the hands of adults. Even we are struggling with it. A tool in the hands of children. Some of them are getting a great deal of benefit from it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not all against screens. I think it's just we as parents need to just have a better understanding. How do we maximize what's good and what's not so good about it? So when we've got children who are um, afraid of missing out, or afraid of missing their friends and needing to catch up on the latest TikTok video or whatever, um, they can be compelled to be on those devices so often that sometimes you think, gosh, have I even seen your eyes look up from your little screen there? And even as of a few years ago, we had about a quarter of youth, as people kind of watched, that were almost constantly plugged in. They were almost constantly on a device of some sort, sleeping with it. Adults who get up in the morning and don't even use the washroom before they check their phone. Um, and that's not an unusual statistic. It's actually pretty common. So these things have really become part of our world. And and the best estimates that I kind of did some what are the latest statistics? What's really happening with screens now that we're in the middle of a pandemic? Well, what's happening now is that, well, if we had a lot of screens happening, a lot of hours of screen time with our children and with adults themselves, people estimate that internet usage and screen time has bumped up about 40 to 60% since the beginning of the pandemic. That's a lot, considering that, our 13 to 17-year-olds were already using the screens like somewhere around 7 or 8 hours a day. But of course, as Sangeeta mentioned at the beginning, we're using screens now for work. We're using it to have a visit with our doctor. We're using screens to come to a talk and find out what's going on. So our visits with grandparents, it's not all bad news. It's just um, it's big. It's very relevant. It's certainly something we need to pay attention to, because uh, we're not really seeing the whole thing with eyes wide open. I guess that's what I want to say. We are not always knowing, what is it about these little devices that that draws us in, because sometimes people are finding, I don't even want to look at my phone that often, and I find myself looking at my phone that often. So I want to talk to you about five human problems, five real life problems that screens are actually a pretty quick fix for. They've offered a quick fix. And if you can catch my language, that doesn't mean good. It just means quick. And so screens, one of the strongest things about screens, which all of us now, none of us I don't think would doubt this or ask questions about it. One of the strongest things that screens are able to do is they bridge separation. If separation is our biggest threat, screens help us to bridge that. It helps us stay connected when we are apart. And because it is safer to be apart this year, we are using screens to be together. So this is a great success, and thank goodness we're still able to have connection. And the question, I guess, is, are we using screens to connect with the people who are going to help our children grow up? That's the important thing. And this is something we can make decisions about. This is something we can help with. If our children are instead using screens to even more effectively connect with their peer group, we may find them pulling even further apart from us, even harder to parent, even harder to get them on the track that we want them to be on, even harder to parent and teach and help them grow up. And it might be even harder for them to grow up, to feel their vulnerable feelings, because honestly, the digital world isn't that friendly for vulnerable feelings either. So these tools are a wonderful tool, a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. If the screen is the boss of us, it's not good. If the screen is the boss of our children, it's not good. That's not what we want. But since we know that screens are really good at bridging separation, I think the onus is on us. One, are there ways that we can connect more with our children? So during the pandemic, absolutely, family times increased. For the first time in a long, long time, people eat dinner together more often than they used to. What has happened though, I think, for a lot of us, if we're trying to work from home while having our children home, is that we're being asked to be in the same room but apart. And that's dreadfully hard. And I know I've talked to so many parents who are struggling with the impossibility of this, which is, of course, why we're using more screens, because we weren't meant to parent in little isolated bubbles like this. So when adults are using screens as a way of connecting, what can happen is that digital connection isn't quite the same. And we all know this. We talk about fatigue from screens and all this kind of stuff. It isn't quite the same. It's just, if it's more available, if it's available to me to constantly be in contact with other people, I might fill myself up on that. I might fill myself up on digital contact. And then when it is time that we can have a family time together, I might not be hungry for contact anymore. I might actually have lost my appetite. And the more I lose my appetite by filling up on the peer contact and the connection with TikTok and Instagram and whatever else is out there, the more I fill up with that, the less hungry I am, the less receptive I am. So you see the problem. And so when we have such a drive to be together, which is our human nature, and we are being together, connecting through digital means that are not quite satisfying, it's also not quite safe. You know, we hear too many stories actually of how the internet isn't always a very safe place. But the other thing that's happening is, even with people that we were friends with, we're now never in a spot where I could share a silly moment with a friend and know with 100% certainty that that isn't going to get photographed and shared. So I become a little neurotic. Am I okay? Are people going to treat me well about this? Um, when we are trying to make contact with people, we ask these questions. How can I bring other people close to me? How can I, how can I find out if they actually are interested or not? Should I be older? Should I be younger? Should I filter myself? Should I put one of those really fancy filters on? Should I conceal who I really am? Or should I actually reveal who I really am? Should I try to impress? Should I just be super nice to people? There's so many questions that we have as we're trying to bridge separation. We're trying to be close with people, but online, it's a bit of a fickle world. It's for adults too. It's really hard. What do you post? Do people only post the very best picture? Well, I've heard some stats about how many times people photograph themselves before they put up a selfie. uh, And it seems like a lot of time. But why are we trying so hard? We're trying to bridge separation. And in a digital world, you can't always tell if people liked that or not liked that. I know sometimes you get lots of likes and sometimes you don't get lots of likes and it makes you feel like, oh no. So it's just really not the same as interacting in a real world scenario. So we're trying to bridge separation, but it's kind of a tough venue to bridge separation unless, and here's the good part, unless it's with the caring adults in our life. Grandparents don't care if your hair's brushed. They probably don't anyway. Most of them don't. Um, if we use this tool as a way of bridging separation from those who really are important influences, then it's brilliant. Then it's wonderful. Then it's a great tool. It's more when we're bridging separation just because I feel alone. I feel too alone. I feel too much loneliness. So we don't always have to bridge separation with devices, of course. We can certainly spend a lot of time in person. And one of the authors who's written about this is Sherry Turkle. She says, these days, insecure in our relationships and anxious about intimacy, we look to technology for ways to be in relationships and protect ourselves from them at the same time. Now that's an interesting comment, isn't it? What are we protecting ourselves from? The hurt, maybe? The face-to-face? The not being invited? We invite ourselves to things sometimes online and it's gets us in trouble. So not only is one of the great strengths of screens, the bridging connection. One of the other things, and I won't spend a long time on this one, but it's certainly a whole topic in and of itself, is screens allow us to make fantasies real. They enhance our looks without having to do anything. Don't have to brush my hair. I just do in a filter. As long as it's not a cat. um, it, it triggers our attachment reward centers in the brain, short-circuiting our real life experiences when we have fantasy connections. Not real. So, I mean, I'm referring to some of the things like connections or things that we're attached to, like winning, dominating, being awesome at a sport. I mean, online, I'm a very good sportsman at all kinds of sports, but I don't have to try at them. So there's a little bit of that, make believe, fantasy is making life kind of pretty awesome in some ways. But hopefully I've got enough maturity to know that I really actually can't ski like a ski racer on a mogul track. But these things, these fantasies we have are potentially what loses our appetite for really working at it. If I can ski and win the championship and I get gold and I get rewards and all kinds of stuff online, it triggers my reward circuits. And then I'm not as willing, not as happy to work for a real deal reward. They've done these studies with mice and they can see that. Wow, we have mice if you trigger their reward circuits in the brain, they lose their appetite for food, like food. They stop eating. So I think there's reason to be suspect, when there's something that makes our children so easily winning champions. It's a bit risky because they can lose their appetite for what nourishes them the most. Working hard at something, gaining little bit by little bit, working at a goal, getting better at a skill. When all I have to do is just play the game a few times and I look up online how to do the cheats so that I get all the money in the game and then I have, unlimited this and that. we we kind of lose our appetite for the hard stuff. And that's not great. We need adults in the future who don't mind working hard at stuff. So, and the thing that I don't want to spend a long time at, especially because it really is a whole topic of its own, is one of the other fantasies that happens in the virtual world, of course, is that children, young adults, young adolescents who really are yearning for contact and connection, they're starting to feel, like I'd like to explore dating relationships. And of course, we've got this whole online world that really isn't meant to be theirs to access, but they do. And, a lot of children by accident or on purpose are accessing pornography and things that um, also kind of fit in this category of making fantasy real. And there's all kinds of risks to that as well. Um, and so, like I said, that's a whole nother topic, and we can't really spend any time on that one tonight. But just know that's kind of a piece of if you've come across some information or concern about children trying to explore dating and exploring it online is pretty risky. It's pretty risky, as we probably all know. So one of the other things that I wanted to say is the third of this sort of group of 5 things that the digital screens are really good at. And this one I think has also really taken center stage this year, and that is screens are really good at relieving boredom. And tell me, haven't you had a bit of boredom this year? How many people have talked about being bored? I mean, I remember at first, last year this time when we sort of shut things down and I thought, wow, it's quiet. I haven't had this much quiet for a while. It's kind of nice. But that only lasted a short time. Then I was like, okay, it's nice, but it could be wrapped up anytime soon. When do I get to kind of go back to my other life? So boredom creeped in pretty quick, I think, when we hit this pandemic, particularly for those of us who really had big plans for spring break and it all shut down. So I think boredom was something we were kind of looking for a solution for. And screens and power watching, downloading shows and, we have a lot of people that are relieving boredom with screens, no doubt. And and this isn't a problem uh, on a small scale. It's mm, not even a problem because like there's been more boredom than we can really do much about this year, and it's safer for our kids really to be watching something on a screen than it is for them to be out playing and out in the neighborhood necessarily. But relieving boredom actually has a purpose. So boredom has a purpose. There's a purpose that if you think about when you were real little and there wasn't any sort of scheduled activity, what did you do? I mean, most of us, we went outside. In fact, some of us didn't even want to go outside. We were shooed outside, get out, get out your cue, go entertain yourself. And there was some wisdom in that because in those voids where nothing is provided for us, where we are not absorbing from the outside, taking something from the outside and taking it in, that's entertainment, we would figure out what was on the inside and bring it out. I know, I would like to, and kids would be like, oh, we could do this, we could do that. And they'd run all over the place and try and figure out what to do with themselves. But that creative problem solving, figuring out what do I do with myself. That's how we figure out who I am. It's also how we figure out how to solve problems. It creates that drive in us that seems to be, as people, we're even noticing in, pre-pandemic, a lot of kids in high school are like, I don't know, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you mean? I don't know. Why aren't you full of 4,000 things you want to do? It's Saturday. You have nothing planned. Uh, you know, we used to have 1,000 ideas. Kids are meant to have a lot of what's on the inside of me that wants to come out. I want to explore. I want to find out. I want to figure out. And so that wonder, that curiosity is born in the boredom. And so this is something I think as parents, we've got to really figure out, how do we better facilitate, make room for, create a bit of room so that our children can fill their lives up with some of themselves, some of their own ideas, that they don't fill up with entertainment all the time, that there's something from them that comes out, you know? And this is, I think, where we enter the conversation about play. And what is play? Play is not really, for the most part, what we're doing on screens. More of what we're doing on screens is not play. If you say to kids, go play, and they pick up their screen, we kind of think that they're playing video games. There's more to play that is not really what's happening. We actually need play to build our brains. There's a kind of play that builds brains, that builds that emergent energy from the child, that allows the child to become themselves, to explore the world, to know what they want to do, to be excited to graduate high school so that they can start their lives. And I don't know if you've been paying attention, but I hear a lot of people saying, I got young adults that they don't know what they want to do. Well, we maybe haven't had enough boredom. So this is something, if I could say one thing I'd really love for you to take out of this is, well, two things. Foster relationship and connection, the real kind that fills us up, and make room for boredom so that play, the real kind of play, can be a much more helpful part of our lives. All right. So I want to talk about not just boredom, because it had a purpose. Now, the fourth way that screens have really helped us, these last two are kind of short. One of them is feeling known. The fourth way that screens are really good at helping us have a shortcut to the problem of feeling known. And you might think, why do we even want to be known? Well, to have really a close sense of I'm loved in the world and people get me and I'm okay. And um, we kind of have to test out and get a sense that who I am on the inside is okay and it's loved, and I've let you know who I am. So you haven't run away. So this kind of says I'm okay. If I can have a relationship with people and they don't, they unconditionally welcome me in. So if we have been kind of shy about letting ourselves be known, the digital world has provided some what seems like an artificial seeming, as if I'm letting myself be known, except that I'm announcing to everybody on my Instagram account the gender of my baby before I've actually had a personal conversation with my cousin or my auntie, maybe even my parents. If I'm feeling known in this way by having hundreds of friends and all these likes and shares and followers, I feel like I'm known. But it may not be with people that I actually know, if that makes sense. It's sort of ironic, right? Feeling truly known, the way that it actually works the best for us is when we are in those relationships with people who unconditionally love and accept all of us, unedited, no filters. That's where parents, caring adults, the people who usually raise children, the educators, where we actually can come way out ahead of the culture of peers, because parents are far more likely to like your picture than the friends. Um, and the pandemic, I think, is an opportunity for us to actually really get to know our family members a lot better, just because we are spending so much more time together. So I think this is one of those opportunities of the pandemic. And the last of the 5 things that the screens make a really quick shortcut of is not knowing. We don't like not knowing things. It's a human problem. We like to know things. And so um, when we want to know something, we used to try and figure it out. We used to ask somebody who is older than us or someone who might have more experience than us. We used to ask a person. Now who do we ask? Hey Siri. Oh goodness. My computer actually thinks I really wanted to call Siri. I'm not going to use that word anymore. Isn't that funny? She just popped up on the screen. Ay, ay, ay. Siri's wanting clarification. Let's just close that. That's the irony, isn't it? I can't have a conversation about this or the other G word, hey, G, because if I say that one, my phone's going to say, can I help you? At our dinner table, how many times have you had this problem? Or not problem? You're at the dinner table, you're having a dispute about something, you're trying to figure something out, and you just go, hey, and the little cube on your table, your desk, or whatever is listening, and it goes, can I help you? It's like, we used to go to our elders. We used to go to our parents. We used to go to our grandparents. And now we go to these devices. But the thing is, there's something about the curiosity and wonder and the figuring it out and sitting with it and mulling it over that actually built brains. It helped us. It grew us. It actually helped educators to be able to provide for children enough that they found out the answer without like drinking from a fire hose where you got too much information and you can't really digest much of what you're taking in. Too much information actually affects the brain's ability to take in information, and we start to tune out because there's too much. So one of the things that I've been playing with, what do we do with this? It's kind of like the video game, or not the video game, the game show where they used to say, if you don't know the answer to that, you can call a friend. Well, what if we started to do that? Instead of, hey, Google, or hey, that other one that my computer wants to talk about, what if we said, hey, Granddad? Or what if we said, I challenge you to find someone who knows the answer to that? And it was actually a person that we went to. I think, we could have a lot more fun with this, and we wouldn't get the fire hose experience. We wouldn't feel the need to tune out. So these are the 5 things that the digital world is really offered to us, because these were things that we were troubled by before the digital stuff started to come out, before the screen started to come out. We were feeling a loss of connection. We were having questions we couldn't answer. We were bored. We were, all of these things. And so the reason they've been able to slip so seamlessly into our world is that they've answered some questions we had, except they've answered them in a quick way, in a way that hasn't actually fostered development, in a way that's actually made, sort of a lot of these things like curiosity, wonder, figuring out things myself, actually being hungry for, oh, I can't wait for dinner time. I get to tell my stories. So by taking all these shortcuts, screens are sometimes interfering with some of the most important things. If you go back to the very beginning of what I said, it always has been our job to raise children, to help them to grow into a mature adult, to help children to figure out, who am I on the inside? to help children have the soft and tender feelings so that they feel when they miss something, they feel when they're sad, they feel when they're hurt. And in a digital world, we can't really express a lot of those things because, there's trolls out there, there's people capturing it and laughing about it. It it's become less safe to have my feelings. And so as children are starting to not feel as much, they're sort of like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. Um, our job as the adult generation helping children grow up was to help them to become capable of all of their feelings, capable of living the virtues, all of the virtues, patience and consideration, and you name it. There's some fantastic lists of the virtues. Almost all of them require caring. And if I interact on a daily basis for 8 or more hours a day in an environment where I might not be cared about, that's having an impact. And so then we're starting to see less maturity, children who don't know how to really consider a complex issue because they aren't accustomed to sitting with an unknown answer and walking around it and considering all the feelings that go with what if, what if. So we are very much in need of these slower answers, but digital fixes, screens, have offered to save us from our boredom. And so now if you're really trying to sit with this as a parent at this point in the talk, I imagine a lot of you are kind of going, oh no, I don't want you to run around your house and get rid of all your screens. That's not the answer. um, they're here to stay. It's just to figure out, how do I answer these questions in the slower way? How do I answer them in the nutritious way that helps our brains grow, that helps our relationships, fosters our relationships? So if you're wanting to get a sense, is my child in trouble? Here's a list of some things to think about. Does your child become bored very easily? Are they constantly seeking stimulation? Is it hard for them to stay in the moment? Has their use of screens become obsessive? Are they, anytime that it's not screen time, becoming very frustrated and full of attacking energy? Are they void of some of those feelings that we need? Do you hear from your children, I don't care? Do you hear your children saying, I miss being around my friends? I miss seeing grandpa. I miss my cousins. I'm afraid that if I go to school and I come home and grandma comes and visits, that I might make her sick. Like, are kids talking about the things that are vulnerable feelings? And if they're not, if they're missing, that's a sign. Are children able to adapt to things that don't work? Or do they keep hammering at the same thing that doesn't work? Because recognizing futility is one of those really vulnerable feelings that's quite hard. When I can win prizes by trying a second level, it's hard for me then to interact when something doesn't work in the real life, in the real world. So now I want to just spend a bit of time kind of going through and offering you a few of the suggestions about, what do we do with this? Because I think the good news, and it has to be good news here at this point, the good news is we already know how to do this, because we already have all kinds of solutions about things. What do we do with things that, maybe a little bit is okay, but a lot is not great? I mean, we already know how to deal with dessert. We don't just give a 2-year-old his whole Halloween candy bag because he'd eat the whole thing and get sick. When they're little, when they're not developmentally ready, when they're not able to manage, when they are full of obsessions and then they can't take the word no and all that kind of stuff, then it's up to us actually to help, to provide them some structure, to provide them some routine, to dole it out a little bit at a time, to be in charge of it. And and even for a child that we've decided, I think they're a little bit ready for some of this, the best times for us to offer screen times for kids is after we've filled them up with contact, after we've filled them up with connection with the adults, with the people who love them. Not even the adults, it could be an older cousin, an older sibling, but filling children up with real relationships and then giving them digital time, not a problem, not nearly the problem. We should fill them up and see that sometimes they are full of, I know what I want to try. When you see and you hear that, it's perfect. And the pandemic actually has provided us a lot of opportunities to use screens to connect with caring adults. And I hear people with wonderful suggestions about playing games with their grandkids, about reading stories together every night, same time. I know some people that have set up particular times in the week where they're going to have grandma nanny time, and this is just time when they're going to bake with grandma, or just do something so that, you know, between 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock, or 5 and 6, when we're really needing to try and get some food on the table, if we've got people in our lives that are missing the kids, man, like, let's use this digital stuff, let's use the screen time there to connect, because that's what we need. It's not just when they're developmentally ready. We have to see that it's when a child is thirsty for knowledge, then they're ready. When they're thirsty for knowledge but not giving them a fire hose, you know, you give them a little bit. I wonder what the answer would be, and you ask them what they think before they go searching for the answer. There's always a time and a season. We know how to do this with so many things. There's a time and a season. There's an age, there's a developmental stage. If we help them to choose, if we help to guide them how to use these tools, then they can become the masters of these new tools, not their slaves. And that's what we want, really. Like, screens can be like junk food, and sure, there's definitely time for a bit of sweets and pizza and all the good stuff. It's just, you don't do that instead of filling them up with the stuff that actually grows them, that helps them. You want to make sure that they understand, and that you understand and you remember you are actually the designated answer for their needs. You are. And so creating some rules and rituals and things that protect boredom, family time, making it easy for your children to connect with you, providing that time and the routines about it. If you have to intervene with their screens, priority is first to strengthen the relationship. You have to collect them, get up in their face in a friendly way, sometimes come along beside them and say, what you playing? Because when they connect with you, they remember, oh, right, you're my person. But if the connection isn't activated, you're going to have a heck of a time getting them off those screens. So take the lead, use it appropriately, teach them the rules of engagement, teach them how to do this. And don't send your children out into the screen world on a hungry stomach. I don't mean food, I mean relationship food. We have to give our children a chance to mature so that they become the masters of these new tools, not their slaves. And I think I'm going to wrap up there. I understand we have some questions and things that are coming soon.
Thank you so much, Michele. What an insightful, thought-provoking talk for us. I was nodding all the way through. I'm not sure about folks at home. My name is Vicki Donahue. I'm coming to you from the Tommy Douglas branch of the Burnaby Public Library this evening. And we're so thankful and grateful to be here with you tonight, and with our friends and co-hosts, Burnaby Family Life. I wanted to just do some very brief updates from the library, and then we'll pass it back to Sangeeta and Michele for questions and answers. So Tommy Douglas branch is one of my favorite branches. It's a great place to come with your family to explore and to be curious together. I understand that March break is coming up, which might be making some of you anxious and a little nervous. Don't be nervous, come and visit us. So here at Tommy Douglas Library, we're open like all the other branches, and our hours are Monday and Friday, 10 to 5, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 10 to 7, and our busy times, Saturday, 10 to 4, and Sunday, 12 to 4. So please do come and find some new books for your child. We're putting together lists of, if your children are bored this March break, please check these books out. You might see some friendly faces. You will see some friendly faces. Here's one of them. This is Anna, our children's librarian. So I have also, an invitation to get in touch with us if you're still not comfortable coming physically into the branch. So I'll just give our website address, and there's more information on your screen, www.bpl.bc.ca. And if you're wondering where Tommy Douglas is, it's Edmonds and Kingsway, a wonderful, vibrant, lovely neighborhood. And we really encourage you to come and visit us here. So I'm going to pass it back to Sangeeta and Michele, because I know I'm looking forward to the questions, and thank you so much. We're so grateful to be part of this.
So just as we wrap up today, I just want to remind all the viewers, all parents, caregivers, grandparents who are out there, that we will be here again next Thursday. That's March 18th, the same time, 6:30 p.m. And next week, we have a great follow-up actually to this conversation, and that's about nature, which is a playground for all children. And we have Jared Krenzel with us. He has been teaching about the importance of outdoor play for the healthy development of our children. And he has been doing this for over 20 years. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. And if parents want more details, please go to our website, which is bflgrosscommunity.org/PLE2021. Also, you can visit bpl.ca, as Vicky had shared. And thank you so much, everyone, for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you next week. And a big thank you to our funder, the Ministry of Children and Family Development, for making this happen. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.